now. Okay, great.
I'm gonna shut off my video.
Yeah, no worries. Awesome. So thanks everybody for joining us for Mentor Monday. This is the Gaining Traction Before Your Product is Ready Mentor Monday. And for those of you who have never been with us before, we're very glad to have you here. As always, with most of our sessions, we'd like to start with a little bit of a land acknowledgement. So first and foremost, we would just like to acknowledge that the land in which we gather on has been and still is the traditional territory of several Indigenous nations, including the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Wendat, the Métis, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Since time immemorial, numerous Indigenous nations and Indigenous people have lived and passed through this territory. We recognize that this territory is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Treaty and the Two-Row Wampum Treaty, which emphasizes the importance of joint stewardship, peace, and respectful relationships. And Sheridan College affirms that it is our collective responsibility to honor and respect those who have gone before us, those who are here, and those who have yet to come. And we're very grateful for the opportunity to be working and living on this land. So just a quick Zoom orientation. I do request that at least when you aren't speaking to keep your microphone muted, just to make sure that we're not getting too much background noise. I'll quickly introduce myself. My name is Cole Arnett. I am the Learning Coordinator at Edge, and I'll be assisting with the back end of this session. If you guys have any needs in terms of chats or have any questions you want answered, feel free to mention it there if you aren't speaking directly during the session. And we do encourage you to share both your audio and video when the time comes, especially your video, because we like to see your faces when we're speaking to you, because it's a nice human interaction. But there is no guarantee or there is no requirement to do so. So quick agenda for today. We're going to do a couple welcomes. As some of you have done already in the chat, feel free to introduce yourself. Talk about your business, talk about your venture idea, and maybe what you're trying to get from the session. Geoff will be running through the session and kind of conducting as we go and answering a whole bunch of questions as we go. Just so everybody is aware, and for those of you who have not interacted with Edge before, Edge is the entrepreneurship and discovery growth engine right out of Sheridan College. We really try and empower those who want to focus on connecting creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship. And we have several programs in which we like to engage with our entrepreneurs and have them grow their business with us. Our 4 programs stretch from the Explore level all the way to the Soar level, which focuses from idea generation and exploring the ideas of entrepreneurship, all the way until scaling your venture and making sure that your venture is getting good growth in the long term. Some of the Mentor Monday outcomes you can see here, and you can check them later as we go through. But without further ado, I'd love to introduce our mentor for the evening, Edge Mentor in Residence and Sheridan College Professor Geoff Hogan. And I'll leave it to you, Geoff.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. This is looks like the busiest Mentor Monday we've ever had. It definitely had the most people registered that we've ever had. And I'm very excited to be with all of you today and talk through all sorts of ideas and scenarios, coming to market, growing your product. I don't have slides. I am here to, this is as if we're all in a big room just throwing ideas out. So a couple of things that I would throw out there to get things started. And you know, if I end up in a dialogue with one founder and you have an idea, just let me know in the chat and we'll get to you when we finish, you know, the previous discussion. So by all means, if there's a dialogue going on, just use the chat to indicate that you want to be next. And I'll do my best. If I miss you, just let me know. Really, the purpose of this session is to talk about this is not just something unique to technology, but any product. How can you get buy-in? How can you, you know, get sales, get interest before your product is ready? And the first thing I would mention is, like, why would you want to do that? Why don't you just wait until your product's done? My background is in software development. I've actually brought a fully developed product to market that I never was able to sell. And by trying to get customers to commit, you are lowering your risk. You are controlling how much effort you're putting in. If it's a physical item, if I'm selling a vase, maybe I come up with an idea for a new product, and but I don't know if anybody will actually buy it. Well, can I try to sell it before I've created it? We have a lot of situations where customers love the idea of a product, but no one will actually commit and buy it. And if you go and poll your audience, and they say, oh yeah, that sounds like a great idea, you go and create the product, you bring it back to them and say, yep, that's a great product, but no, I don't want to buy it. And it happens remarkably often. So, this is all about discussing pre-sales, right? We're all familiar with, things like Kickstarter and Indiegogo. Can we get deposits? Can we get advanced contracts? We're all living under COVID, and the government of Canada pre-purchased the vaccine from, I think, 12 different manufacturers, knowing that all of them may not end up existing. And now it's a special circumstance where they're able to demand or have people sign a contract for product that may never exist. So I think that gives you a framework. This can apply beyond, an app, a website, a service. It can be a physical product. But we're here to discuss ways that we can try to get market traction, get commitment from potential customers, to lower our risk and know that it's worth going through and creating that product. At this point, I'd like to open it up to anyone who wants to bounce ideas about how they could implement this thought process with products that you have. Start with a little introduction of what product you're thinking or hypothetical product. There is a balancing of ethics. You don't want to try to sell someone something that doesn't exist, but at this point, I'd like to open it up to the floor.
Me.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, hi everyone. Should I say about my business, or should I just kind of?
Why don't you, for the benefit of everyone, give us a really quick overview?
Okay. So, hi everyone. I'm the founder of Kinetica. Sorry. Wait. Let me take this out because there's nobody around. And sorry if I look funny. But okay. So, what I'm trying to do here is I am selling. I'm going to stop here. I'm selling courses online, or trying to sell, but obviously I'm creating, and as I'm creating, I have been doing interviews, market research interviews with people, with coaches and trainers. So the idea here is my courses are about biomechanics, and the idea is to teach coaches and trainers about the biomechanics of injuries, how do they happen, and then get them to have an understanding of how they could potentially prevent with different exercises. So the goal, the goal is to create both courses and resources that coaches could potentially use, and everything is online. So I don't know, I think currently I'm struggling with, I guess, like creating that sales funnel that needs to happen to sort of like prepare the audience, because now I've built some relationships. I have presented at conferences. I have people on my mailing list. I have about 500 leads that have signed up. but I don't know how to keep them engaged. I don't have the products ready yet. They're almost done, but I don't understand. Like, I have this like fear and anxiety about like, how do I prepare them to know that there's something coming? How do I use those conferences for my own benefit, right? Like, as in like announcing them that something is going to be coming, that something's going to be launched. And then once they've given me their emails, again, I have this challenge of like some of those emails going into the spam folder. Not a lot of people following me on my social media channels. So I gotta say, like, I have my contacts sort of like spread out, some of them through emails, some of them through, social media. And I really don't understand what, first of all, what kind of channels to use more successfully. So like email or social media, or how do I get them to kind of like come onto my social channels? And then two, what kind of messaging do I have to kind of like deliver, and how long before I'm planning on launching a product, as in like to prepare them that something is coming, spark some interest, and then reveal what it's going to be, you know what I mean? And like that kind of timeline of events and the messaging with all those kind of like milestones, like how can I do this, right? And then kind of combine it with, I guess, like how can we, yeah, like how to use all the kind of like the channels that I have available. So yeah, I hope that that's kind of a clear question. It's very complex, so I get it.
Well, I'll do my best to bounce some of those ideas around there.
Okay.
So, we tend to think of, we have a sudden day that all the products are ready and it's available in the store and you're accepting payment and you're off to the races. Now you've already done great market research, you've built some interest in your courses. One thing that you can do is, classic sort of pre-sales. If you buy this now, and this is really what Kickstarter tends to be, I will give you, if somebody is investing in something 2 years in advance, it would be quite reasonable to give them 75% off, because they're going to have to wait 2 years for a product. And the closer that you get, and then it's, a launch sale of a 10% discount for the day that you launched it. Anything that you can do to try. One of the things that you're doing is you're balancing risk, because the concern is that you're going to lose interest of individuals, but also people are not going to buy it in the first place. You have, what percentage of those 500 people can you convert? You can sell people on what you can deliver, but you don't have ready yet. If you can create, the movie trailers are starting to, introduce, I'm excited for this movie. The reality is, when you see a movie trailer, the movie's not done. The movie's not even close to done. They've just taken a bunch of the scenes and they filled them in a particular order to start building the marketing side. Now, the reality is, people aren't, you can, but it's pretty rare to pre-buy tickets. But if you look at like Tesla, the Model 3 car, they were taking orders 2 years before, like the production line hadn't even been set up, and people were putting down deposits towards something that's going to be available in the future. You always have to balance what reward they're getting for signing up. Are you taking a deposit? Are you taking full payment? If you try to say, I'll give you a 10% discount if you pay in full 2 years in advance, that's kind of ridiculous. Nobody's going to go for that. But don't be afraid to ask for money before the product is ready, as long as there's a balance of what they're getting in return, and the commitment that they're showing. Okay.
Cool.
So, or rather than simply paying like 100% of 75% of the product, maybe they can put down a deposit, and that will guarantee them a lower price. that is balancing their risk and your risk. You're
Yeah.
trying to balance that risk between them and you.
Cool. I have a question like on that. Do you know if there are any examples of how other people have done it that may be available?
Well, we see lots in the market, and maybe other people can have examples, but Kickstarter is by definition, is a huge example, and there's all sorts of products on there where you're balancing early adopter. I want to be the first to get it. I want to support this project, support its creation. So Tesla is another one that's, people are still paying for the self-driving feature. People paid in advance for that feature 3-4 years ago and haven't received it yet.
Okay.
You just need to balance that expectation, that when is the product going to be ready, and try to under promise. If you're going to commit to a date, you don't want that date to slip. And we've seen products that, they're languish in what's called development hell. There's been movies that took 20 years to get made. There's been products that, video games that have become a running joke because they took 10 years to be created.
Yeah, don't want to be that. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So,
cool.
Hopefully that helps. My biggest message to you is don't be afraid to ask for money, even if it's just $5 towards this, because then you know who are your committed customers. And if you're creating 6 videos, but they all prepaid for video number 4, that is the one to work on. Like, where is the actual commitment?
Okay.
Because occasionally what people tell you what they want and what they're willing to put money towards don't always match. There's lots of situations where people will express interest in something. Wouldn't it be great if this existed? But then somebody creates it, brings it to market, and nobody buys it.
Okay.
One of my favorite examples is, I'd love to have, restaurants. There's always examples of, or there's a movie theater in Georgetown, and the movie theater was shutting down, and everybody was like, oh, it's a shame, we're not going to have a movie theater anymore. And then the follow-up question is, well, who ever saw a movie there? And nobody in my group had ever seen a movie there. Well, of course they went out of business because nobody ever saw the movies there. We all wanted it to exist. We all wanted it to be there, but none of us were actually going there and watching movies there. So of course it went out of business. So just because people like people will say, a famous landmark, restaurant or club will go out of business, and people will say, oh, it's such a shame that this landmark's going out of business, but yet nobody actually went and spent any money there.
Right.
So
okay, cool. And do you think that you have to keep your audience engaged to a certain point? Because I always hear that you have to kind of like give stuff of value, right, to kind of like grow your audience. And I think when you're delivering education, sometimes it's a fine line as in like, how much do I really want to go give away? Like, I've been thinking about, oh, well, do I do a YouTube channel? But then a YouTube channel, I am afraid that I may just expand a little bit too much, right? Leaving no room for sales.
For you, I would suggest might be, a 30-second clip, or take content that you're already creating that is too small of a chunk to really have a whole lot of value. So you're talking about, preventing injuries. Well, you can talk about, an obscure, you could even do something like tennis elbow, right? And just do a little blurb on tennis elbow and send that out so that, if you pick an obscure injury, they'll see what you're creating and see its value. It's not your entire set of content. It's a really tiny preview. But then they can see what you're working on and what the final product will look like.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a sneak peek. It's like a trailer,
Right.
but you don't want to
Okay.
give them too much. You don't want to take all your best content. And we've all seen movies where they took all the best part of the movie and put it in a 2-minute trailer.
You
Right?
already know what's gonna happen. Yeah.
Yeah. So trying to, if you can make it something that looks really cool, but clinically doesn't have value. Maybe it describes the problem, but not the solution. Then you can keep them from getting the value from your work without paying for it, but still
Right.
keep them interested.
Okay.
Give them some insight.
Okay. Cool.
Does that help?
Cool. Yes, a lot. Thank you so much, Jeff.
My pleasure.
I can go next.
Go ahead.
Is it okay if I can just add a comment on that one before? If I could suggest something for that idea. One thing I was thinking, maybe you could offer a free course to people, potentially your audience, that would be willing to take that course. And on the second one, you could charge a small fee, like through Eventbrite, and charge for that one. And at the same time, collecting information on potentially what changes or what kind of things they would like to learn about. That's just a suggestion as well.
Thanks so much. Yes.
No problem.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't catch who had the next.
Yeah, my name is Sakina Mihar.
Oh.
Can you hear me well?
Yes.
I'm the founder of Saving Tech. It's an inclusive mental health platform for post-traumatic stress disorder. We are in the telehealth. It's not exactly telehealth, and it's a B2B model. We are early stage startup. We have our prototype ready, but we need to go into a clinical validation. And right now we are trying to get into St. Michael's Hospital to get it done. So because our main customers are B2B, we have social media channels. We have Instagram, LinkedIn, and an email newsletter. But one of the things on our website too that we kind of missed is we don't have a sign up available to get traction. We have on our website published 4 features that are for free, and in which is basically a breathing exercise for calming in 4 languages, 3 languages actually. And there's been a number of plays. It's got over 300 plays, but unfortunately we did not catch the people who were playing because it was just free and open, and it was hosted on SoundCloud. So I was wondering, right now, one of the things we are thinking of doing is similar to an e-com sign up. We want to provide like a gratitude journal for them to give us their email so that we can build traction with them. To say, okay, hey, if you like this, sign up with us. We'll give you a gratitude journal or another kind of wellness type of material for them as an incentive for sign up. But our midterm to long-term goal is also to raise funds using crowdfunding potentially, which would need such type of traction. But I was wondering if you and the other folks here had any ideas or suggestions on how we can get more of attraction, especially because our website, I feel like we are talking to our end users, but our real customers or paying customers will be B2B.
Yes. First of all, what's the name of your venture?
It's Savin, SAVYN.
Thank you. I think you've already caught on to a key component, which is you have end users of your resources, but they're not your customers. You're not expecting end users to pay you. You have a B2B model. So that can present some advantages, but some challenges. The challenge with trying to sell directly to end consumers is generally they don't necessarily have the funding and the clear cost benefit to understand why to invest in it. It's hard to get end consumers to pay $3 for an app, whereas asking a hospital to spend $30,000 is quite reasonable. They're very different scales.
Right.
So it is quite reasonable to sign up gate resources. And this is a common technique used, especially in business to business, because things like Instagram and Facebook are really good at reaching consumers, but not so much on reaching corporate clients.
Right.
So very often you might have resources, and business to business resources tend to be things like white papers, like resources, handouts. If you have a one-page brochure that they can print and hand out in their office or email to their clients,
Right.
that is something that a business would want and could then you're at that point, you're creating a free resource and you're doing a trade. You're like, give me your email address and I will give you this. And there is it's a reciprocal arrangement. They understand that you are likely going to email them. I think taking it a step further is trying to see what resources from a fully flushed out product you can start generating business interest in. So even if you have a really simple toolkit that meets a need of that business in delivering services to PTSD clients, that is if you can create even a stripped down resource guide, potentially you can charge a business customer and say, wouldn't you love to have this toolkit, this white paper, intake forms, assessments for PTSD? Another common one is research, compiled research on persuasiveness of PTSD, even guides that your business consumers can give out to their clients. A frequently asked question document for family members. So a resource that, if you're producing value, it's quite fair to ask the business to pay for that value.
Right.
Now, in pre-COVID, in the paper world, you could print documents and sell them and say, I will sell you a bundle of 100 brochures for this much money. In the digital world that suddenly COVID has put us in, that's a little bit more challenging.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I really like the idea of like a stripped down version. And I'm thinking since we've already have the breathing techniques when somebody's having a panic attack, how we have a guided we have a audio only guided walkthrough of that breathing exercise, and it's not only in English, we have it in Arabic and Mandarin, and we are adding other languages. So I kind of think that would be our way into our businesses, like settlement agencies and things like that, to say, hey, do you know any newcomers who are feeling these symptoms? Here is something that you can use, type of thing.
Right. Now, a flip way that you could potentially approach this is creating resources for consumers that the consumers are then going to ask the business to provide.
Right.
And this is kind of the tail wagging the dog, in that if you go to consumers and provide a stripped down resource, say it's a breathing exercise, but it's only the first 30 seconds, and you say, tell your mental health care provider to ask your mental health care provider So the classic example is prescription medications. We get advertising on TV all the time, but we can't go and buy them. They have to be prescribed. So they say, go ask your doctor about this drug. So you're getting the consumers to generate the demand to the doctors who can actually provide it. You know, the challenge with that is, you know, you can sell someone on it and they love it. It doesn't mean you're going to get a sale just because the consumer likes it, because then if they walk into a hospital, you know, you're at the wrong end of the chain.
Right.
It does have some value, and you can control the branding there. You can also think about licensing, in that if you can say in those audio clips, not to be shared without a practice license, and then, you know, it's a little harder to control if they get shared without your control, but practices will generally want to be on the right side of copyright, and therefore will pay to be allowed to give this out to all their clients.
Right. Amazing. Thank you so much. That was a lot of things to process and a lot of good feedback for me to work on. Thank you.
My pleasure.
I guess that might be me. Should go?
Wonderful.
Nice. So I guess I will start off by saying, like, this is really cool. This is amazing. I'm currently a marketing student. So, and I guess the reason why I'm here is because I was able to sort of like, uh, when it comes to marketing, launch a digital marketing agency just early October. So when it comes to, I think when it comes to like templates and strategies and CRMs and like like webinars and stuff like that, I have those things and like let's say a Google Doc, and my goal is to like put that out and make just keep making it automated. But the main reason, one of the reasons, the main reason I'm here is because not too long ago I had a tech idea for a startup. I presented this to my school, just talked to them about it. They gave me, a couple prizes like an iPad, and I was able to get into the Founders Institute, and that is it's a program where companies like I hope I'm right on this, but companies like Udemy and Fairly AI first got into, and really built on their idea. So the idea is kind of like linked with Elizabeth and maybe Giuliani, based on where they are. It's a tech that sort of like and I went to research before going into this. I saw that in the past 12 months, 10% of Canadians bought an orthotic insole to sort of like reduce foot pain, and almost 70% of them complained that because of a busy schedule, they did not have time to exercise or take care of their body, and this was through Vivid Data. So the idea was to see if I could create an insole that could reduce foot pain, just like how the orthotic insoles are, but could also measure distance run, calories burned, uh, send those kind of information to the smartphone, similar to the smartwatch, but for competitive runners. I looked into that. Runners would be the first people to grab their hands on technology as being an early adopter. So basically, I got into programs like Edge here, like TechTO, um, which is like TechTO Founders Institute, the Rick Center. I got a chance to basically speak with some of the founders and get some idea, which was to build something, and also I got into Facebook groups like the my Canadian running Facebook group, asking a couple questions just to get that market research where runners are in. Now I'm building more of like a business plan to get into um, Humber launch, a competition coming up in Humber as well as Ryerson. So I'm building up those business plans to get into there. My question is, I believe that marketing would help me because that's something that I like doing. Uh, uh, Now it's just building that stuff. I was able to connect with people in tech that have built things in the past. when it comes to hardware, in terms of the pieces that goes into the insole, when it comes into software, in terms of data. You did say something that you have built a software before, but it never never sold. So I was thinking that was really key, because now I'm doing this market research to speak to people and hopefully get more people on Zoom. I've spoken to about 50 people, 50 runners, just to via Facebook groups and things like that. So it's more like, how do I do good research, and how do I build that prototype, because I feel like I really need to build something. And yeah, I'll just keep it there.
Okay, that's wonderful. It's very exciting. A few things I'll initially throw out there is that you have different markets sort of converging in this really cool place of a wearable and telemetric insole. And I'm familiar, I have a foot pod. I believe it's Garmin brand that goes on my shoe that tracks telemetrics with me running as an athlete. There, you have different approaches you can take. You have the podiatrists that traditionally deal with feet. And you also have competitive runners who are looking for data on their running. So you have two sets of individuals that you could actually sell to. You can sell to podiatrists who are then going to resell, like go on and provide it to their clients and collect data, impact, all of that useful information, force, strain gauge. Then you also have the competitive runners, who many of them thrive on data. They want to know exactly what their body is doing in order to get the most competitive aspects. In terms of why we're sort of here, the shortcut to market, you have a couple of different options. Like you can, find the people with the technical background to build you something. Another option that you have is try to find existing off-the-shelf products like a foot pod that can move you in the right direction. So if you can take a couple of commercial off-the-shelf products, wrap them together in your own product, that might be a shortcut, because I think your biggest hurdle right now is actually creating a physical product, and the pure amount of cash it would take to put the Ant Plus or Bluetooth receiver, those are kind of the protocols that would be transmitting into an insole thin enough that it could fit in a competitive runner's shoe and not impact their ability to run. And it's a challenging technical solution that a device maker like a Garmin maker wouldn't has a team of engineers. I don't believe you have a team of engineers hiding behind you ready to go and develop custom circuits. So my suggestion would be to see if there's off-the-shelf products that you can take advantage of to try to shortcut your route to the market. Because to create a fully realized product, your other option is, together with that, something like a Kickstarter, Indiegogo, one of those fundraising platforms. But to go there, you really need at least some sort of prototype. And it doesn't matter how hokey it looks. If there's a battery pack this big on the person's ankle, you need at least something that you can use to show this off. So it's tough because you have a big technical hurdle, And what you want to do is reduce some of that risk by getting buy-in and figure out which of those two customers are your primary customers. If you're doing elite level athletes, $5,000 for a set of insoles is quite reasonable. But if you're selling to podiatrists, that's going to be a really tough sell. Who is actually encountering enough foot pain problem, to fund that much? How much you can charge for your product is going to depend on which side of the market that you go to. If you're doing mass consumers, you need it to be a $17 component. And you don't even have a component yet to,
Yeah, absolutely.
How does that feel so far?
Yeah, this makes a lot of sense because I was looking at in terms of market competitive runners, because these are people that, they're in the game, they're in this sport for the long run. They want to get better. They want to measure, track their activities when they're training with your coach. So they have the ability to spend more. When I was really thinking about this, I also looked at two things you mentioned: getting people to build something, and getting existing off the shelf products. When it comes to the first one, getting people to build something, I was also looking at agreement templates that I could have in place, and just to talk about either uh, the amount of effort needed, and hopefully equity in the future that I could be giving to people to come on board and work for me, something that doesn't have to when it comes to money doesn't have to change hands, because it's a startup. But having those agreement templates, non-disclosure stuff done that I could use to go find talent. And when you talk about off-the-shelf products, I did list out like I think 5 to 6 competitors that are fairly new in in this kind of industry. Not like the Apple Watch, 'cause that's just too big. But like the new one that came up was like Whoops, is a kind of funny name, but it's out there and it's making noise. But I listed some of them. Now, when you talk about existing off-the-shelf products, if I go and get these kind of devices, I'm just wondering, is it to strip them off and get some people to help me put this together to create a prototype? How are we thinking about that? That second option, that second one.
That it is challenge. You probably need oh, sorry, what's the name of your venture again? Somebody was just asking in the chat.
It's a startup. It's a startup. I it's not built yet. It's
Okay.
from a website, so it's not fully up
Okay.
yet. I'm just
No problem.
Right. Yeah.
So there's existing products that work in a different way. Like I have, again, as an athlete, I have pedals on my bicycle that cost $1,500 because they're power sensors. And they indicate how much power I'm putting into a bicycle when I was doing Ironman, when I was racing. So if you can take an existing product, it is a shortcut to try to get to that value proposition. And it comes down to solving a problem an athlete has. You can take an existing product, break it in half, pull out the innards, write your own app for it. You have some shortcuts there. Even if you took NFC data collection tags that are used for keeping produce safe, if you have a way to shove one of them into a insole, the things that I think, just understanding your problem quickly, you're looking for an accelerometer and potentially a strain gauge and maybe a temperature sensor. So can you find an NFC tag small enough that has all of those in it? You can also think about, would a running clinic, like there are not a podiatrist, but elite level, a running clinic, sports medicine physicians that want all of that detail. They might want the angle of the foot and they're using high speed photography to video somebody running on a treadmill. So it's a matter of really digging into that problem and trying to find a shortcut of, whenever they bring a new car to the market, when they did the CRV for Honda, they just took the Honda Civic and put a taller body on it, right? They saved a lot of cost by reusing as much as they could. So if you can find a shortcut to get a hardware solution using something like NFC tags, then you can, you're taking an order of magnitude of $1 million in development down to thousands of dollars in development costs. It's not as good, but it might be good enough to get your product to market, get those initial early adopters. Okay.
Sounds good.
I'm happy if you want to follow up by email after the session, just to send some tech ideas your way in terms of protocols, and hopefully get you moving in the right direction.
Absolutely, that would be helpful for sure.
Thank you very much. Okay, we've had some great questions. Chris, you up next?
Just had two questions actually. Number one, I guess it goes into what Favor was saying. The one question is about credibility. So if you have Tesla, who's established and says, hey, put down $35,000 for something that we will create in 2 years, people will do it because they have credibility. Whereas, someone like myself or Favor or someone who's a startup say, hey, put down some money for something, we don't have that credibility. So in Favor's case, for example, you might want to try to get a doctor, for example, who's a specialist and who can bring that medical part and be a partner with them, right? Because they have to have skin in the game so that they can say, yes, these runners need this and this is the scientific because that's what it boils down to, is like, how do we trust Favor? It's a great idea, but how do we know what he brings to the table? So my question specific to a SaaS product is, how do you build that credibility? Because, you want to try to get people to pay for something that hasn't been built. So just want to get your view on that first part of the question.
It is tough, particularly with SaaS, because whenever it's SaaS, they're like, okay, well, where are my login credentials? Let me see it. And I've done product demos for products that are incomplete, that are, the classic being, you can't change your password. You can't change your name. Like, a lot of the functionality is not done, but the important stuff is there. Oh, sorry, that report's not working because we didn't create it yet. There's finding the balancing act. You don't want to be deceitful, but you want to present your product in a very positive light. Using something like Kickstarter actually, whether it should or not, lends some credibility. Another would be signing up someone for a contract, not collecting money from them, but trying to get some sort of commitment, a pre-sales agreement where you agree in principle, if we deliver this is what you want. You're just trying to up that commitment. The most commitment you can get is money in the bank, right? If somebody puts $35,000 in, they can't get any more committed if they've already paid for the product. And the reality is, if you're doing business to business, that's too committed, in that they've lost their leverage if they've fully paid for the product. Now, I can guarantee the vaccine example with Pfizer and Monera, when the government signed on for those vaccines, they didn't pay any money. They just signed a contract saying, if you make it and it's approved, we will buy it. And that was enough for those vaccine developers to know, okay, we can spend, $100 million on product development because we know we have customers that they promised if we got the product done, they will buy it. So you can sort of try to balance that in the in-between, saying, again, you have to give them something for it, because why can't they just wait until later? A classic problem is robbing current sales for future sales. If you're like, version 2 will have, this feature, oh, I'll just wait until version 2 is done. Well, meanwhile, when version 2 comes out, they're like, oh, well, version 3 says it has this, so I'll wait for that, right? So you need to give them something. So you can, when you're close, you can say, this under promise and over deliver. So limit what you're promoting that your product does. And if you sign up now for our launch date, then, this is the discount. Or the biggest challenge with business to business is that money doesn't work the same way as it does business to consumer. So it's not as simple as saying, I'll give you a 25% discount if you sign up now. A lot of businesses are like, meh, because you have to think about their buying decision. And really, is it worth them taking a risk? What are they committing? So if you can strip down your product and get it to market faster, the faster you can get them something, even if you can get it stripped down to the minimum viable product, the minimal piece that does something useful to them, and make it free, then at least they're on the platform and you've got them committed and they're using it, and then you can grow it.
And I think that leads to my second question, which is about traction, because a lot of people do concentrate on traction being money, pre-sales, sales. But I was thinking more along the lines for SaaS especially, or, when I'm thinking about Liz's product, like she could reach a lot of people. Like, is it more about traction as in the number of people? So maybe you don't charge them that first, but you try to get as many people to get excited about it and to use it and to look for the bugs and to actually see, oh yeah, this is really, really useful, and then start charging. So I guess that's my other question, like the traction piece, especially for SaaS or some other businesses, is it more about traction in terms of dollars or traction in terms of getting as many people as possible to use your product?
So that is a business model decision. So if you think of something, there are some business models that require a large user base. And it doesn't matter how many paying customers you have. So something like Facebook, something like Twitter, something like a dating app, right? There's no point. It doesn't matter how wonderful your dating app is if there's only 10 people on it. Getting people to pay for it, like it doesn't have any value, because you have a fundamental need for a large network, a large base, in order for it to have value. So for those, I highly recommend trying to do hockey stick. Like, you're not trying to make any money, you're trying to get a large market saturation to make the business model work. That's particularly if you're crowdfunding data. MyFitnessPal, which is a calorie and diet tracking app, an exercise tracking app, they got all of their nutritional data by getting their users to fill it in, right? I picked up this can of pop and it doesn't know how many calories is in this can of pop, so I go and add it to their database. Well, their business model is very much built on having a huge number. Some business models, it doesn't matter how much, you only care about the paying customers, right? The question is, do those free customers offer any value? And what is your chance of converting them to paying customers? So Facebook, MyFitnessPal, all those free customers are helping your product. they're growing your product, they're helping build it. The dating apps, you need as many people possible. You don't care how many, you want people to pay, but that's not fundamentally your business model. But be careful about just trying to get as many customers as possible if they're only producing load and taking away and giving you grief, and they're never going to be paying customers, and you're never going to make any money off them.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, lots of great questions. Cole, you look like you have a great question.
Well, I'm just thinking like I want to offer to anybody to come onto the stage, I guess, to ask their questions. But I do have some of the questions kind of built out based on what
we do have. Hold on, we have one person who's trying to talk.
Masil,
Said
are
in
you
the
trying to
chat.
speak? We can't hear you, unfortunately. Could be an issue with your microphone.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. Yeah, sorry to cut you off there, Cole. I was actually
No,
trying
you're
to talk the whole time, I guess. Yeah, so my name is Marcel. I'm actually working on a product that is trying to get people to actually earn a higher interest rate on their savings account. So right now, I don't know if you guys know, but your savings account gives you, like your basic savings account gives you 0.05% on your deposits. If you go like a bank like Tangerine, they might give you 1 or 2%, but it doesn't go beyond that. So we're trying to offer a platform for millennials and kind of like Gen X, Y, Z for a way to achieve higher interest rates. Now, to be able to do that, we have to actually obviously need the product. So I was going to ask you, like, how do you build that traction before you even have that product to market? Because the way like our business model is making money off the spread, so we lend out that money with partners that we have right now. They promise us a certain rate, and then we kind of split that. We take a certain spread, and then we give the rest to our clients. So how do you go about getting that traction before you have that product available for people?
That's a great question, and yours is a particular market where volume is very important.
Yeah, that's right.
So there is no spread. If you have one customer who gives you $1,000, you say, okay, I'll give you 3% and I'll put it over here and I'll get 3.25%. Well, a quarter of a percentage point on $1,000 a year is not going to pay you for the time it takes to answer an email, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's just not, so you need a huge volume to then flush out and create all the infrastructure to get the economies of scale to make this work.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound right?
Yeah, it does.
So particularly for financial products like yours, this isn't going to sound great, but you might have to pay to lose money in that. Let's say you have a total portfolio of $20,000. You may have to take all the money or more money than you actually gain in interest on that portfolio and pay it out to the clients. And this is where, for your model, funding becomes very important. So I'm just throwing some numbers out there. Say you make $1 million, you have $1 million portfolio, so you get 1% interest on $1 million. That's $100,000 a year, and that's the break-even point for this business model.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how do you get to $1 million invested when the first $500,000 you're not breaking even on? And you're not getting those economies of scale. If you got funding on somebody who believes in your product, venture capital funding, then you would potentially have not only cash to do the development, but cash to pay out, say you're giving out 2.5% return. you need to pay out 2.5% return for your first customers until you hit a big enough portfolio that it starts becoming profitable, because there's no margin on that first $1,000 invested in you.
Mhm.
It's kind of scary, but you have to pay out consumers before, I don't see how you could convince consumers to invest with you ahead of time. The only option is doing it from a time period. They're not going to want to give you money and not get a rate of return.
Mhm.
But you could potentially say, okay, January 1st, 2022, you could do like a term deposit kind of structure, not accept the money until a later date, but try to get people signing up. You still have the problem of that financial backing to make sure there's a return. This could be, if you think of it like a crowdsourcing campaign, if I don't sell 1,000 copies of my book, I don't take the money from anybody, right? That is one option that you have is, could you get people to sign up in theory for this product, but until it reaches the big enough critical mass, it doesn't exist. Is that an option?
Yeah, well, I see what you mean. I mean, it'd be a bit complicated. I mean, I guess from what you're saying is you could try and kind of go to people and see if it's something to be interested in, and kind of ask like, look, I don't know how much you keep in your savings account, but if I offered you this alternative, how much would you, switch over to our platform? How much would it be considered to, move from your bank to our your initial bank to our like new fintech platform, and then see. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, I wouldn't be signing a contract with anybody on like you have to deposit this amount, but see if there's some type of market fit, I guess, in that sense. I guess is what I'm getting from this a bit more.
There's definitely potential there. The most challenging part with this product is the critical mass. Your critical mass, though, isn't like I was just talking about with Chris, with a set number of users. It is with an amount of cash, because you're if you have $10 million invested in this fund, then it pays quite well.
Yeah.
But if it's if you only have $1,000 invested in this fund, you're it's pennies.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Yeah.
So it's got its unique challenge with scalability. If you, I think you have to pre-sell it in some way, but it presents some unique challenges. So.
And then one other quick question I had in terms of like trying to kind of get a small market first, test the product on that small those small leaders, I guess, that want your product. Like what's like a realistic number? What I would like to do is kind of get the first product out being like, you're gonna make this amount of interest rate if you move to our bank, and that's just what we offer. And then later on, I'd like to see if users would like to see like, oh, do you want to kind of like break down your savings account to achieve certain goals, whether it's paying back your education, your debt, or going for a vacation, or saving for a specific thing. So I'm trying to test that market in a way and see what features they'd like me to add later on. What do you think is a realistic number of users to have to be able to really test out a product before enlarging and getting to that final offering?
That's challenging because there's two different scales. There's a sort of numbers of users, and then there's sort of portfolio value. And you're trying to find that sweet spot. High-end financial planners aren't looking for more customers who are broke, because their business model relies on the margin, not on the number of customers. You're probably trying to find 10 to 100 unrelated people. You have an uphill battle, but the other part is you may want to sell not directly, but make this product available to individuals like financial planners or, some other way to get this to market. Because building out a sales force at the same time as trying to build out the product is a challenge. What is your core competency? Is it selling it? Is it coming up with the product? Because you're sort of split between those.
Okay. That makes sense. Well, thank you so much, Geoff. I appreciate your help.
My pleasure.
Hi.
Michael, is that you?
Oh, yeah, it is. So quick overview of my company. It's a brand new startup. Basically, it's called On-Site Monitoring. It's developing remote monitoring services to help companies or organizations to secure sites using zero net energy surveillance trailers. So when I say zero net energy, it's just a fancy way of saying we'll be using propane and solar power to power the gear, and the gear being AI cameras to surveil a site. So like you said, COVID has kind of changed the way how we do business, just basically life in general. It's become an accelerant. So things that people had on the list of things to do has now become, you need to do it to survive, either in business. So handing out any kind of flyers or any kind of brochures doesn't seem to be the best approach at this point, because everybody's trying to be clean and safe. So in this aspect, I would think cold calling would be ideal, and sending out emails. The problem with sending out emails is you don't know if it's going to hit the junk box, and you don't want to be spamming somebody to the point where they actually say, okay, I'm just going to put it straight to the junk box, or you don't know if it's going to be hitting the spam filters where the person never sees it. So I guess my question is, once you are cold calling and you're calling a company, who would you ask to speak to in terms of an influencer? So for my company, let's say I would call the TTC. Let's say they have some rail yards, or they have some yards where they have equipment that they want to keep safe. So if I call up TTC and I say, hey, this is who I am, who do I actually talk to who would I ask to be directed to who's an influencer that can then make the decision to say, yes, let's go ahead with that guy's product or not?
That's a wonderful question. I've done a lot of cold emails rather than cold calling. Generally with cold calling, it is extremely time consuming, and unless you know who you're trying to reach, you can get bounced around the world and never actually reach anyone human. I like the idea of, research. LinkedIn, if you can figure out the job title of, say, site manager, LinkedIn will let you figure out who, people with that job title. And then it is fairly straightforward to try to call them directly or try to email them directly. LinkedIn will charge you for in-mail, which may or may not present good economics for you. But if you can figure out who a specific person is based on job title, I've had great success with that. So for my software, we would normally be trying to contact a shelter manager. My software company makes software for domestic violence and sexual assault centers. So we're normally looking for a shelter manager or an executive director. So then once I know an organization, it's fairly easy to look for the executive director of XYZ. Then I know who it actually is. And when I go to reach out to them, I already know a bit about them. It's much easier to build a rapport. On the cold email side, you can, rather than email them and saying, I have this product, what I've always done for cold email is I've always emailed asking for help. Because if you email someone asking for help, they're much more likely to reply to you. And if you also think about it, you're making whatever employee receives that email, it's their job to answer you if you ask for help. Versus if you just send a brochure, it's not their job to make sure it gets to the right person. They can just delete it and move on. So I would email saying, hi, I was wondering if you could help me. Can you connect me with the person that is responsible for this? That's it. Don't try to sell your product. Don't mention your product. Just try to connect to the right person. And then once you've connected to the right person, then you can say, and again, it's all about help. I was wondering if you could tell me, is this, and then you're getting into the sales side. Do you have this problem of, having power sources for surveillance equipment? And just really try to learn from your potential customers, even if you already know the answers, to then help them sell themselves on your product.
Perfect. That makes complete sense. Thanks.
I was wondering if I could just quickly also reply to Michael because he said something with cold emailing. So in my first month of launching a marketing agency, I actually used cold outreach, and that's how I got my first client. And the way that I did this, and this might be helpful. So you said something when it comes to Geoff, and I hope I said that right, Geoff. You said something when it comes to getting the decision maker, right? You, of course, you want to speak to that person because that's the person that makes decisions. So something that I did was, and I learned this, something that I did was you could go to like US reference Canada, or a site that has a list of companies. So what I do is I bought a list of I got a list of about 1,000 in my niche, plumbing and HVAC contractors. And it would tell me founder. Sometimes it would tell me this is the founder. Most of the times, sometimes it would give me the email. It would give me fake emails. But I said, I'm looking for this this industry. I need people making this amount of money in this industry. And I got name, phone number, email, address, all those kind of things. What I did was I cleaned up the list. I used when it comes to cold emailing, like you mentioned, Michael, there are many out there. I use Lemlist. I use Lemlist because it would, when you get a new domain, I would advise if you're sending out cold emails, buy a subdomain so that it doesn't hurt your actual domain in case of, like you mentioned, blocks, spams, and all that kind of things. So I got a subdomain, and I was able to warm up my email so that when I start going out to them, pushing it out, it wouldn't look too weird. So I warmed up my email for about a month, and I started sending out emails. Hi, my name is this. I'm looking for to work with, for example, work with one company in your area. We do this, and that's how. And then I cold called them for sure. Hey, did you see my email? This, that kind of stuff. And I looked at some of the best companies that I wanted to work with, about 40 of them, and I would create like a 5-minute video on Loom or Vidyard and just say, hey, this is me. But then 1,000 emails are still getting sent out, and every day I'm calling maybe 5-10 people, and I got my first client, and that's what I did. Now I'm working on like automating like messages and stuff like that, but I'm going to do that like month 2 of February, in February. So that really helped me to get that first client. Hopefully that's super helpful. Hopefully that's helpful.
That is, thank you.
Do keep in mind you have to watch the Castle regulations in Canada, basically anti-spam. Generally, it's accepted that business to business is not a huge issue. But in terms of getting past spam filters, your best bet is to sit down and write one email, especially if you have a very much a premium product. So like if one sale, you don't have that many potential customers, but sales are high value, you can invest the time in writing one email to one person. So if the economics work for you, definitely do that. I'm just going to address one question here that came into the chat. Already registered as a business name as a sole proprietor for an when do I register for a business number? That's a bit of a complicated question, so may have to follow up offline with that one. A sole proprietor master business license is like an alias for yourself. The business numbers could be a payroll number, which is an RP number, an HST number, which is an RT number, you know, a incorporation number. So a business number is kind of broad, but that's when we can check with Cole, but we could probably follow up offline. I'm getting the thumbs up. Great. We're having lots of wonderful questions. I'm inviting anyone who hasn't had a chance to talk through some scenarios. Please speak up. We have, what do we have, about 20 minutes left, Cole?
Actually, we got about 10 minutes left before we end for the day.
Okay.
And if nobody has any specific questions they want to ask, I do have some from the registration page that I can bring up as well.
Okay, let's give it a moment for anybody who'd like to ask their own, and then we'll dive into. You got some ghosts behind you, Cole.
That's why sometimes it's better that we have backgrounds, right?
We'll give it 1 second, and if nobody chimes in, then Cole can deliver some of the questions that came from the registration page.
Hi, Jeff. This is John. So I do have a question, but I feel like there might not be enough time. So
Okay.
I'm launching a sort of a directory. It's kind of like Yelp, where it basically a search for ethical brand stores.
Mm-hmm.
So I've created this directory, and I think the one of the things I'm trying to aim at is having people not only put in reviews, but also kind of pictures of the products that they like. So kind of like Instagram, things like that. So similar to how you use an example of a dating app. So I need to build up that kind of user base. It's not, I have a prototype of the site. It's not fully developed because, you know, I do want to see if this idea is something people will be interested in before fully developing it. So one of the strategies that I'm taking is have people submit pictures on like Facebook groups of their favorite products, and then putting it on the site, and then see if people would use the site as a way to search. So that's my approach so far.
Something that I would throw out there and possibly suggest, and I'm very much a proponent of the niche. If you can focus on a specific community that maybe is geographically related or market related, it may allow you to get that critical mass, because really ideally you would have an entire, so it could be the Georgetown Farmers Market completely on your platform,
Yeah,
or all of the jewelry makers in GTA on your platform, because that critical mass issue is a challenge.
Yes, yeah, it is very much so. I am kind of doing that where I'm aiming at zero waste, And
Okay.
so I've been posting on like zero waste group like Toronto, zero waste like Ottawa and such like that, and then creating a search for them specific, and also working with fair trade groups like Fair Trade Canada has a number of nonprofit groups around Canada. So kind of using them as a way to, hey, if you want to search for something under that category, you can use the site for that purpose.
Now, this is sort of going back to what I mentioned with one of the other attendees, which is even if you can provide some resources, toolkit, like people who are trying to do zero waste, where you might fit in is, okay, you've achieved zero waste. How do you publicize it? How do you get everybody to know you've done zero waste? If you can help with obviously promoting themselves on your platform, but how can they promote themselves, brand themselves to really get the payoff for that competitive advantage of having invested the time and effort to get to zero waste?
And you talk about stores and brands, like that side of it versus the user side of it.
Yes. So,
but wouldn't I have to prove the user side for it before even talking to those stores and brands? I feel, or I'm just kind of throwing it.
Yeah, you have a sort of a chicken and the egg problem. You need lots of brands to get the consumers. You need lots of consumers to get the brands. You know, a company that has achieved zero waste, especially if you can show them value, like, you know, selling them membership to your site, you know, or promoting themselves on your site when you don't have a large customer base, doesn't have value. But if you can include that as a side benefit with something else you're doing for them, you can try to jumpstart that.
Okay.
So
something to look into. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so thank you so much for you're such a concise and very valuable answer. Yeah, thank you, Geoff. Appreciate it.
I hope it helps.
Yeah, absolutely.
As anything, this is for everyone. Anything that I say here, you know, if it go with what works for your business. I'm just here to bounce ideas off of, maybe come up with new things. So there's no right and wrong answer for any of this.
Oh, very helpful. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm just going to grab one question. I think we're out of time from the registration questions. So I might go eeny, meeny, miny, mo. So one of the questions that came in here is, how far in advance should I be advertising? Does it look unprofessional if the final product is not done? And that's always a challenge, because ultimately, if you're trying to get your product perfect and you're not trying to sell it, you have a chicken and the egg problem. My suggestion is to get things out there sooner, to just get them done, get to market, start hustling. Don't worry as much about somebody seeing your site and it's a little bit glitchy. You know, try to get everything right, but you really need to focus on trying to get to market as quickly as possible. And occasionally you can get bogged down trying to get everything perfect. One of the questions that came in, will these be posted on the website? I'm going to hand that question off to Cole, who just reappeared.
Sorry, you want to repeat that one more time? Will these be posted on the website? So all of our sessions that we post and that we make public, we usually post on our YouTube channel. Specifically with the Mentor Monday sessions, we make those live and public to everybody, unless somebody within the session requests otherwise. However, if you did attend today's session, you will get a personal email direct to you, talking about the resources from the session, as well as a link to the YouTube video. And I love getting the dog in the shot. Awesome. Furthermore, I would love to, thanks, is there a way to reach out through email? I will probably put, with Jeff's permission, his email along with that email that I send out, probably within 1 to 2 days, in which you can interact with Jeff in whatever fashion is the most appropriate. Additionally, I did post it in the chat for those of you who took part in the session. If you could please fill out that Mentor Monday feedback form. I'll post it one more time, just because we'd love to get your feedback. We're trying to improve these sessions as much as we can and get feedback on what you guys liked, what you guys didn't like, to make sure that we're serving you the best as possible. Jeff, did you have any other pieces before we sign off for the evening?
I don't. If you like my dog, she's actually available for adoption, literally. She's a foster dog. So send me an email if you're looking for a dog. I can't. It's anybody's guess. She's originally from Mexico. I would say she's a Jack Russell Lab.
If you have some information about the dog, I will also include that in the email going out today.
Definitely. Just
awesome.
I'll paste it in the chat window.
Awesome. Otherwise, I hope everybody has had a wonderful time and enjoys their evening. Please feel free to check out our event page, or if you aren't already a member of Edge's programming, please feel free to check out our programming page. I'll post a link in here as well. And I hope you each have a wonderful evening.